Welcome to this video on managing file and storage services. In today's digital age, managing files and storage is a crucial aspect of any organization's IT infrastructure. In this video, we will cover the basics of file and storage services, their importance, and how to manage them effectively. Firstly, let's define what file and storage services are. File services refer to the ability to store, access, and share files within a network. Storage services, on the other hand, refer to the physical hardware used to store data, such as hard drives, solid-state drives, and network-attached storage devices. The importance of file and storage services cannot be overstated. Efficient management of these services ensures that data is easily accessible, secure, and backed up. It also ensures that the storage infrastructure is scalable and can accommodate the organization's growing data needs. In this video, we will cover the following topics: setting up file and storage services, managing file and storage permissions, configuring storage redundancy and backups, monitoring and troubleshooting file and storage services, best practices for managing file and storage services. So, let's dive in and explore the world of file and storage services. Before you can start managing file and storage services, you need to set them up. In this segment, we will cover the steps involved in setting up file and storage services. Step 1. Determine your storage needs. The first step in setting up file and storage services is to determine your storage needs. This involves identifying the amount of data you need to store, the types of files you will be storing, and the level of redundancy and backup required. Step 2. Choose your storage hardware. Once you have determined your storage needs, the next step is to choose your storage hardware. This could include hard drives, solid-state drives, or network-attached storage devices. It is important to choose hardware that is reliable, scalable, and fits within your budget. Step 3. Install and configure storage hardware. After choosing your storage hardware, the next step is to install and configure it. This involves physically installing the hardware and configuring it to work with your network. You may need to configure network settings, such as IP addresses and subnet masks, to ensure that the storage hardware is accessible from all the devices in the network. Step 4. Set up file sharing. Once your storage hardware is installed and configured, the next step is to set up file sharing. This involves creating shared folders on a storage device and configuring permissions to control who can access them. You may also need to configure access protocols, such as SMB or NFS, to ensure that the shared folders are accessible from other devices in the network. Step 5. Configure backup and redundancy. Finally, it is important to configure backup and redundancy for your file and storage services. This involves setting up regular backups of your data to ensure that it is protected in case of hardware failure or data loss. You may also need to configure redundancy, such as RAID, to ensure that your data is still accessible in case of hardware failure. By following these steps, you can set up file and storage services that are reliable, scalable, and secure. Once you have set up your file and storage services, the next step is to manage file and storage permissions. In this segment, we will cover the importance of file and storage permissions and how to manage them effectively. File and storage permissions refer to the access controls that determine who can access, modify, or delete files and folders on your storage device. Proper management of these permissions is crucial to ensure that your data is secure and only accessible to authorized users. Here are some best practices for managing file and storage permissions. 1. Use the principle of least privilege. The principle of least privilege states that users should only be given the minimum level of access required to perform their job functions. This means that you should avoid giving users full access to all files and folders on your storage device and instead grant them access only to the files and folders they need to do their job. 2. Regularly review and update permissions. It is important to regularly review and update file and storage permissions to ensure that they are still appropriate. This involves removing access for users who no longer require it and granting access to new users as needed. 3. Use groups to simplify permission management. Using groups to manage file and storage permissions can simplify the process and ensure that permissions are consistent across multiple users. For example, you could create a group for the marketing department and grant them access to the marketing folder on your storage device. 4. Monitor and audit permissions. Regularly monitoring and auditing file and storage permissions can help you identify any unauthorized access attempts and ensure that permissions are being used appropriately. This can be done using tools such as access logs and security information and event management SIEM systems. By following these best practices, you can effectively manage file and storage permissions and ensure that your data is secure and only accessible to authorized users. In this segment, we will cover the importance of configuring storage redundancy and backups and how to do it effectively. Storage redundancy refers to the practice of duplicating data across multiple storage devices to ensure that data is still accessible in case of hardware failure. This can be achieved using technologies such as RAID, redundant array of independent disks, or mirroring. Backups, on the other hand, refer to the process of regularly copying data to a separate storage device or location to protect against data loss due to hardware failure, natural disasters, or other unforeseen events. Here are some best practices for configuring storage redundancy in backups. 1. Choose the right redundancy and backup strategy. The right redundancy and backup strategy will depend on your organization's needs and budget. For example, RAID 1 provides basic redundancy by mirroring data across 2 disks, while RAID 5 provides more advanced redundancy by striping data across multiple disks with parity information. 2. Regularly test backups. It is important to regularly test backups to ensure that they are working correctly and can be used to restore data in case of a disaster. This involves performing test restores and verifying that the data is intact and accessible. 3. Use offsite backups. Storing backups offsite can protect against data loss due to natural disasters or other unforeseen events that could affect your primary storage location. This could involve storing backups in a secure cloud storage service or at a separate physical location. 4. Automate backups. Automating backups can ensure that they are performed regularly and consistently, reducing the risk of data loss due to human error or forgetfulness. This can be done using backup software or built-in backup features in your storage hardware. By following these best practices, you can configure storage redundancy and backups that protect your data against hardware failure, natural disasters, and other unforeseen events. In this final segment, we will cover the importance of monitoring and troubleshooting file and storage services and how to do this effectively. Monitoring file and storage services involves regularly checking the health and performance of your storage infrastructure to ensure that it is functioning properly. This can involve monitoring metrics such as disk usage, network bandwidth, and backup completion rates. Troubleshooting file and storage services involves identifying and resolving issues that may arise with your storage infrastructure. This could include hardware failures, network connectivity issues, or software errors. Here are some best practices for monitoring and troubleshooting file and storage services. 1. Use monitoring tools. Using monitoring tools can help you identify issues with your storage infrastructure before they become major problems. This could involve using built-in monitoring features in your storage hardware or using third-party monitoring software. 2. Regularly review logs. Regularly reviewing logs can help you identify issues with your storage infrastructure and troubleshoot them more effectively. This could involve reviewing access logs, error logs, or backup logs. 3. Perform regular maintenance. Performing regular maintenance on your storage infrastructure can help prevent issues from arising in the first place. This could involve tasks such as updating firmware, cleaning dust from hardware components, or replacing failing disks. 4. Have a troubleshooting plan in place. Having a troubleshooting plan in place can help you quickly identify and resolve issues with your storage infrastructure. This could involve having a documented process for identifying and resolving common issues, as well as having a list of contacts for support from your storage hardware vendor. By following these best practices, you can effectively monitor and troubleshoot file and storage services and ensure that your storage infrastructure is functioning properly.